All right. I'm Mike Hall, currently the Executive Director of the Three Rangers Foundation, and through our missions and programs, we are supporting the Ranger Regiment's Ranger for Life initiative by providing experience, guidance, and vetted resources to current and veteran Rangers and their families. We support the 75th Ranger Regiment's Ranger for Life program by providing benchmark transition assistance to current and veteran Rangers. We maintain transition counselors at each of the Ranger battalions, offering timely and personalized support in the regiment's big five of transition: mentorship and networking, education, financial wellness, VA benefits, holistic fitness, and wellness. Central to our approach is an extensive mentorship program leveraging a network of former Rangers to enhance opportunities and ensure Rangers thrive in their post-military lives. These meaningful relationships allow both mentors and mentees to stay connected to the Ranger community and benefit from shared experiences and guidance. Transition is a lifelong event. Today, we're going to hear experiences and advice from Ranger Network mentor, Captain Retired Patrick Hanlon, on real estate investment and learn about the Ranger Investors nonprofit. Patrick, great to catch up with you. And thanks for all you do giving back for a very long time. Why don't
Thank
we
you.
start off with you telling us a bit about your military and your post military background?
Sure. So I enlisted in the Army National Guard in 2011 with the intent of becoming a Green Beret, but I actually enlisted as a 35 Mike, which is a human collector. I was told that there was no 18 X-ray contracts available. And I think that was the first lie that my recruiter told me. So, but fortunately, I was able to try out. I ended up in SF. I became an 18 Echo, which is an SF Commo Sergeant. Got a deployment in, and then I decided that I wanted to commission. So I commissioned, went over to active duty, became an infantry officer, went over to the 82nd, deployed with the 82nd, and then tried out for and got picked by 1st Ranger Battalion to head over there. Moved to Savannah about 5 years ago and had the time of my life at 1st Ranger Battalion. I would definitely say that was the peak of my military career. And it was kind of like the culmination of, I was able to apply a lot of things I learned as an enlisted SF guy. And then also from the 82nd, as a junior officer, I was able to come to 1st Ranger Battalion to kind of put it all together. But unfortunately, my body started to break down. I ended up having spinal surgery, got a couple screws right here in my neck, and I was medically retired. So I found myself kind of in a tough position because special operations had been like truly my calling. I absolutely loved it. But couldn't do it anymore. So I decided to go headfirst into real estate investing, which I had been doing like a lot of Rangers had been doing, like on the side, kind of as a side hustle. But after I was medically retired, we jumped headfirst into it, which was not easy. Fortunately, I was not the only Ranger who decided to go this route. There were a lot of other guys who were pretty heavily involved in real estate investing that were on active duty or had transitioned out. And so we kind of got together and stood up this group called Ranger Investors, which helps Rangers and their families build wealth through real estate investing. Uh, and that's like really important because when you're in the military, you're going to make a finite amount of money and it's really not going to be that much. And frankly, if you look at how good Rangers are at their job, I think they're like massively undercompensated for it. So if you want to build wealth, lasting wealth for your family, you've got to look at some other options. And real estate happens to be one of those. So uh, myself, Shane Warner, some other guys, we stood up Ranger Investors, and it very quickly grew from like 10 guys, 10 Rangers, just, BSing about real estate to now in our Signal group, we've got over 160 active members. Our LinkedIn group has over 200 members, and our Facebook group has a little over 100 members. So I would say in a very short amount of time, we went from just a small group to a large group that includes Rangers, family members, and then also like friends of the Ranger community. Now we're at the point where we've got, like a Coast Guard Dolphin pilot in there. There's a couple SF guys, but the core mission remains the same, which is to help Rangers and their families build wealth through real estate.
Yeah, that's great. It's the Ranger for Life program is predicated on, I mean, the Ranger Regiment realizes everybody's going to get out of the Army at a certain point, and that's why they've implemented the program to help people to adjust to that whenever that is. And I think, one of the principles of that is if you can help guys prepare for what's after. I mean, we all, just like you said, we all love it, but there is life after the military, and we got to do something. We got to set up our family. So, that this is a great one. I mean, I don't know if it's still a regulation, but you used to have to ask your chain of command to get a second job, and of course, that was a readiness issue and a time issue, and those kind of things. But even if that regulation is still in place, I mean, it really doesn't apply. I remember when I first talked to you and I heard about it, I thought, "Oh, well, this is just retired guys, former guys, and it's active guys." And it dawned on me. I said, "Yeah, why not?" I mean, I was lucky and had some smart people in my chain of command who set me on a right path on investments. Very conservative, not knowing when I was going to get out and set myself up for success. But this is a really good one. Rangers are good at it, I think. They're very transparent. We talk to a lot of guys and says, I can't be a salesman. I say, oh yeah, you can, because you're honest, you're transparent. You know how to take care of people, and you're not going to steer them the wrong way because that's just not in your nature. So,
Yeah,
um,
I think Rangers are already suited for investing in general because they're very comfortable with risk mitigation, which is like a key principle in successful investing. To be a good investor, you've got to be cool when everyone else is losing their mind. And that's something that Rangers are very good at. Also, because we move around so much, we're already exposed to more real estate transactions than the normal person because your average American maybe in their lifespan is going to move 2 or 3 times. They're probably going to stay in their hometown. Whereas you join the military and it's like, you never know. I think I moved like 19 times while I was in the military. And you start to get good at buying houses, and you start to realize like, oh wow, the government actually incentivizes the purchase of real estate, and there are these programs that are in place. And so before you know it, you can end up, like Master Sergeant Shane Warner, who's got an awesome portfolio, multiple states, multiple tenants. He's bringing income in. And you can do that in a pretty short amount of time. And we've even got, I remember there was a guy in our Ranger Investors group. He chimed in. He's 20. I believe he's probably E4 now in 375, and he just bought a duplex. And I use the story all the time because he's complaining and he feels like he's like behind the 8 ball. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I was 27 when I bought my first piece of real estate. So it's cool to see some of those younger guys like really getting ahead of the game, especially because to be successful in real estate investing, you've got to leverage time. So if you can get in early and then let time work for you, you can really see some massive gains.
yeah, actually, I was sort of young. I mean, I was lucky because I started in First Ranger Battalion, and you don't go anywhere unless you want to go somewhere. Or back then, if you broke, they sent you away. But I mean, part of our wealth was, my what we didn't buy other houses, but at 20, we bought our first house off of Stevenson there for grand total of $25,000 just before they even paved the roads back there. And then we found another house, but we were in no hurry to move, so we were able to get the price that we wanted at our house and then move into another house. And we subsequently went through 4 houses in the Savannah area, and it significantly, contributed to, I mean, paid for my son's college. The profits that we made off of that. And we certainly weren't real estate people, but we also grew up in an era that you never lose money on real estate unless you're a dummy.
Right.
Unless you really don't know what you're getting into. So speaking of that, I mean, what resources does the Ranger Investors Group provide folks? I mean, there's lots of social media, but are there other resources? And how does it work to help people not make those bad real estate choices?
Sure. Well, what I think is like the coolest feature is our signal group, because you can go in there and you can ask a question, and there's no such thing as a dumb question. And you're just going to get at least five really solid answers from experienced investors who are also rangers. And the nice thing is it's signal group. So like your dumb questions aren't going to be broadcast on Facebook, or they're not going to be broadcast on Instagram. So you're like already in a safe space. And the responses are very quick. I mean, I was just looking at some recent traffic, and one guy's like, "Hey, I need a roofer in Columbus." Within 30 minutes, they get a recommendation. Another one, "Hey, I just got this quote from my property manager who wants to do," I remember this one. The property manager wanted to do $7,000 worth of work on this ranger's property in Colorado Springs. And myself and a lot of other rangers chimed in and were like, "No way." Like, we don't need to be replacing cabinets. Like, absolutely not. So it's stuff like that. Like, if you want a little reality check, you can go in the group, you ask a question, and you're going to get some really good feedback. So that's one thing. Another thing that we have to offer is the mentorship, just like Three Rangers Foundation. So within our Ranger Investors group, you can reach out and find folks who might be a little bit further down in their investing career, which I think is really important, because I'm a big believer in like, find the person that you want to be, 5 years from now, talk to them and listen to them and take their advice like very seriously. Uh, to use a specific example, Max Shea, who's either recently got out or he's on his way out, he linked up with the Ranger who had gotten out years before him, Brad McGay, who's a commercial agent up in Philadelphia. Next thing you know, Max got a job at CBRE on Brad's team in Philadelphia. Uh, and that's just like a perfect example of a young guy finding a guy who's a little bit older than him, pairing up with him, and eventually like is following in Brad's footsteps, which I think is great. And it benefits, let's be honest, like it benefits Brad because he gets to recruit some awesome talent onto his team. And then it benefits Mac because he really got like shortlisted. CBRE is a very competitive firm. And so he was able to get that interview and get brought onto that team and have that certainty that he had a job lined up for him before, he hung up his boots and was out of the Army, which is huge.
Yeah, and of course, a goal of the Ranger for Life program is guys to walk out of the Army with their VA benefits, which is huge, financially, and into a good situation, a good job. So, just the amount of stress that reduces is incredible. No, whether you're getting out after 4 years or 34 years, I can tell you that. So, uh, I imagine it's very broad. I mean, it's commercial real estate, residential real estate, private investor kind of things. Uh,
Yeah,
most
we
people when you
don't.
when you think of real estate, it's I'm a real estate agent. I run around in a pink Cadillac and sell you and try to sell you a house. But I don't think that's what really. I mean, that's probably part of it, but probably not what Ranger what Ranger investors really are about.
Right. Because I think there's a key difference between working in real estate and investing in real estate. So, and you often have to do both. So, a lot of rangers become real estate agents, but then they use the proceeds that they make to invest in real estate. Because the thing with most jobs was like the day you stop working is the day you stop earning. With real estate, that's not the case. So, for example, like Gabe Maldonado, who's a lender with Veterans United, he was in 175. Uh, he invests in real estate and he's also a lender. So he's got the W-2 income coming in where he helps a lot of Rangers, including me. We've done a bunch of deals together. And then he also invests in real estate on top of that. So the group does not discriminate. We've got commercial agents that are involved. We've got residential agents. We've got commercial lenders, private lenders, property managers, great example. Carlos Cordero, who manages my Airbnbs, he actually manages probably close to like 45 Airbnbs in Savannah now. Yeah, and that's like a perfect guy, right? Like, let's say you're a ranger in Savannah and you just stood up an Airbnb. You have no idea what you're doing, which you shouldn't, because Airbnb is very confusing. You can go reach out to Carlos and he can manage your properties for you. And you know
Wow.
he's not gonna rip you off, right? Because he comes from the community. So there's all sorts of like I said before, like we don't discriminate. We're not a group of agents trying to sell you on something. We're not a group of lenders trying to sell you on something, or property managers or whatnot. The goal is for all of us to build wealth through real estate, and all of us, we've got our own jobs or professions that bring in that money. And kind of like when you start investing in real estate, when you're in the military, you've got your consistent income stream that comes in from the Army. And if you're smart, you can take a chunk of that and invest it. When you get out of the Army, you've got to find a way to replace that consistent income stream. So for a guy like Brad McGay, he went and worked for CBRE, became a commercial agent. He makes money off those commissions, but then he also invests in projects in real estate so that he can have that long-term wealth. So it's really key to pair those two things together. And I don't want people to think that they can just snap their fingers and have a massive portfolio of real estate that allows them to kick back. Because that's, unless you got a silver spoon in your mouth, that ain't likely.
Yeah, it's this group is also. I think I could say it's unique, but it's like the Ranger Mentor Network. There's really no competition. It's about we're going to help you. We're going to help each other. We're not competing against each other. It's like how the network works. A guy he wants to get out and he's looking for a certain kind of job and he talks to a ranger at Lockheed Martin and he said, "Hey, what do you got? Tell me about Lockheed Martin. Is it good culture?" And the guy goes, "Well, I don't think we really have anything at Lockheed Martin, but I got a buddy over at L3 Harris. I'm going to link you up with him." I mean, where else do things like that happen where you're more interested in the individual and helping them than you are, and sometimes at the risk of your own job, probably.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do those conversations over Gmail and not over company mail. But yeah, really unique. Uh, what are
And
the pros and cons of setting up multiple LLCs? And I mean that's probably, I mean, LLC is an LLC. It's probably a little bit broader than real estate, really. I know I ran through that myself.
yeah,
Never
that
figured it out.
question, that is the number one question that comes up on Ranger investors. Uh, I don't know why, but oh, I think because if you go on the internet and you start asking like ChatGPT or something, what do I need to do to invest in real estate or to buy real estate or whatnot? Someone's going to tell you you have to set up an LLC to invest in real estate. That is not the case. However, there are tremendous benefits to setting up an LLC. Um, and so what I tell like all Rangers when they ask this question, whether in the group or directly to me, I'll say like, all right, we got to look at the whole picture here. If you own one house and you're thinking about buying a second house when you PCS to another duty station, and if your idea is to put or buy a house with an LLC, you're not going to have access to one of the most powerful tools in real estate investing, which is the VA loan. Nor would you have access to a conventional loan, because
Hmm.
an LLC buys something, they are most definitely going to have to pay much higher rates. So when my LLC, Home Buyers of Savannah, we're buying property all the time, but the last property we bought, we had to get some financing and the interest rate was 12%, which is about double what we could have gotten if we had tried to get a primary home mortgage and move into it. So that's a very key difference. And when it comes to real estate investing, that difference right there, that spread could easily wipe out any sort of cash flow that you hope to get. The other thing too is that some guys will try or think they can buy property in their own personal name because they have a good credit score and because the government incentivizes home ownership. So they think they can buy it in their personal name and then move it over into, Joe Bob LLC. Well, the problem is if they do that, a lot of mortgage lenders forbid that. So what it'll do is it'll put your mortgage into default, which is not good, right? Because you could think you're being slick by moving your, single family home in Pooler, Georgia, move it over into Joe Bob LLC. But then your lender, Chase, gets wind of it and says, hey, that mortgage is now due in 90 days. 256K, pay it up. which is, most people are not prepared for that. So it's like one of those things you got to really like dive into the details. And I think like what normally happens is you'll know when you need to start setting up LLCs because you're going to start to get too big. You're going to start to get to the point where you can't get any more loans as an individual. It becomes like really difficult for you to do it. And so you have to try and go other places to get money. Um, there's another advantage of LLCs, which is the legal protection that they provide, but it is not, you know what it is? It's like an MRAP. It's like you get an MRAP. Like I've been blown up in an MRAP. Like it is not provide you 100% protection from every danger on the battlefield, and nor does an LLC. If you set up an LLC and then you do something irresponsible through that LLC, that does not mean that you can't have aggrieved parties coming after you still. So it's not like, oh, well, that's okay. My LLC is the one getting sued, because for most single member LLCs, they're considered disregarded tax entities anyways. And a lot of people confuse and they don't compartmentalize. So they're using their personal finances and personal financial tools with their businesses, which makes it very easy to do something called piercing the corporate veil. So what I'm kind of getting at is that, like, yeah, on paper, an LLC can provide you great protection, but you have to be extremely disciplined in how you manage that LLC and make sure you keep everything under that roof. And for most people, that's just impractical.
I'm gonna lump this next question. They're sort of separate, but I think they're sort of connected. When you think of real estate, I mean, you're probably going to have to invest if you want to invest something in it, to make it better, to make a profit at some point. Most people think that's probably only with residential, but it's really, I got a good friend in Savannah that owns a bar there, and bought another piece of property, and it's it's getting it's getting a lot harder to get it fixed up. So, how do you vet and find a good contractor, and I mean, how does this all work? How do you find a good property manager? How do you vet that property manager? I think they're sort of kind of connected. I mean, maybe the same process. That's why I sort of lump them together, if that makes sense. And if not, just tell me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And um, it's very important to find trustworthy partners to work with, because then we're going to decrease the risk of litigation down the road. So, step one for finding any partner, I would go to the Ranger Investors Group and state very clearly what you need and where you need it, which a lot of guys will do. Like they'll go in the Ranger Investors Group and they'll say, hey, I need a property manager for this in this location. And then people are going to chime in. And I would recommend you always interview at least three, we'll call them like contractors or property managers or whatnot. You don't ever want to fall in love with the first lender you meet or the first contractor you meet. I always say like the rule of three. And even to this day, I will still use the rule of three, because it's so easy to have one conversation with someone, and if you're not experienced, to fall in love and then be like, oh, this is the guy or this is the girl, I'm going to work with them, this is perfect. And then you go down this road, and then unfortunately you might find yourself in the point of like no return, where now you've partnered with not the best contractor, but you're halfway through a home renovation. So what are you going to do now? Are you going to try and bring another guy in? Like, because the next guy or gal might say, well, I don't like anything they did, we want to start from scratch. And I have had that happen. I have hired contractors before. One gentleman in particular down in Florida who got arrested like halfway through the job when he was refinishing our bathroom. So then I had a bathroom that was unfinished, and I had a contractor that was in prison and was probably going to be in, I think he ended up in prison for like a month. So couldn't wait. And how did we end up in that spot? Because we felt bad for him and we didn't talk to enough people.
The next thing I'd like you to hit on is things that most people on, at least I didn't. I think most people in active duty don't realize uh, sources of wealth out there, and they're sort of really inverse sources of wealth. It depends how you manage it. And that one is how do you manage real estate taxes? That's something, when you're in the military, you don't really worry about taxes, and you don't realize it's really what I call a reverse source of income. If you don't
Yeah.
Everything you do, if you don't have an eye towards how that's going to affect your taxes, you're paying twice for it. And of course, the other one is insurance. None of us think of any kind of insurance while we're in the military, and then we realize how expensive, whether it's health, life, or property insurance, you know, how that affects your wealth also. So, just generally, how do you deal with finances and look how you look at real estate taxes and insurance and those things that, I mean, quite frankly, most of us, I don't think those important parts of aspects of our life and our finances, we don't think about while we're in the military. Most of us have absolutely no experience. I mean, high school, army, now we're out. So,
Right. Yeah, and like what's easier than doing a tax return if you're in the army? It's going to
yeah.
be more straightforward, right?
Yeah, you just go down on post and they just put it in there and they spit it out and you're done.
Right, exactly. Um, yeah, this is a really good question. So if you're getting into real estate investing, you're just going to have to get smart on all those things that you just brought up. You're going to have to get smart on insurance. You're going to have to get smart on taxes. Yes, you could outsource all of it, but if you outsource all of it, then you're not going to grow at all. You're just going to provide some information to someone, you're going to pay them, and then hopefully you're going to get something back. So, what I would recommend is like a lot of self education and then rely on the experts, but get smart enough so that you can have like intelligent conversations with the experts. And also like it's very rare that you find one person who's going to be able to tell you the answer to everything. So I have a CPA. That CPA does my taxes, but that CPA doesn't do my bookkeeping, and that CPA does not help with tax planning. So right there, now I've got, when it comes to taxes, three like integral roles. There's the person who's doing the bookkeeping and the accounting, and then there's the person at the end of the year who files the taxes. But probably most critical is that person who does the planning, because the last thing you want is to get to the end of the year and then be surprised and go, oh, holy cow, I owe 60K in taxes. Or a good surprise, right? But either way, like as investors, we don't like surprises, period. Um, so what I do is like I do a lot of self-education. I use a lot of chat GPT. I'll ask it a million questions. I'll go to Ranger Investors. I'll ask a lot of questions of my peers. I'll do quite a bit of reading. And then whenever I go into a meeting with the subject matter expert, keep in mind that you're paying for their time and you want to get the most out of it. So rather than ask this person very basic questions, I try and prepare myself ahead of time and like really get into the meat of things, because I personally just think it's sort of a waste of money if you have a discussion with a real estate attorney and you're asking very basic answers where the answers are like on Google, right? We want to be asking questions of those people that are questions that like only that person can answer and that it's worth our money. Because the other thing too is like a lot of the experts, they're not free. So you're going to be, if you want to go talk to a really good CPA or a really good lawyer, it's going to cost you close to $300 an hour. So I'm not going to waste $300 an hour asking my attorney things that I could find out by asking ChatGPT. What I'm going to want to ask them is the stuff like once I've exhausted the answers that are out there open source, and then I hit a roadblock, okay, now it's time to talk to the attorney. So kind of a long answer, but like it takes a lot of self-education and preparing yourself for those for those interactions with those people. And then also, you're going to have to build like and it's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight, but you're going to want to build a pretty broad network of experts. Cool thing about Ranger investors is that you could find experts in all these different niches. So you could find, let's just use Savannah, for example. You could find an expert that in residential real estate acquisition. You could find an expert in commercial real estate acquisition. You could find an expert in commercial lending, hard money lenders. You could find an expert in VA loans. You could find an expert, in another type of loan. And then with lawyers too, we had a lawyer on the other day who was great. He works for a huge real estate company. His hourly rate was like ridiculous, right? And his own advice was like, don't hire me to answer stupid questions. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. Like, if you want to pay me $1,000 an hour and I'll tell you basic stuff, like, go for it. Like, but he was saying like a lot of this stuff you can figure out on your own. So
We could go on for a long time, but the question I want to finish up with, because at the end of the day, we're all talking about transition at some point. About CSP and how do you find a CSP?
also great question. And it sounds like the CSP stuff is always changing.
Yeah, like
When
the commanders have some control over that.
They do for sure. So we've actually brought on through my company, Home Buyers of Savannah. We're on our second like formal CSP program right now. And for those guys, when I talk to them, like anything, like start planning ahead, and most importantly, get on your leadership's radar, because the leadership has so much discretion in it. So if you are upfront and honest with your leadership and you tell them, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is an organization that it's going to help me get there, then like if I were to put myself in those shoes, and I remember back when like advising the commander on CSP stuff, like if the soldier or ranger engages with you early on and is upfront, then there's way less resistance and friction when it comes to like getting those approvals. Where I have seen things go awry is if you drop something, like anything, if you drop it on the commander's desk and you're like, hey, I want to go disappear for 6 months doing this. And then the commander's like, oh, I had no idea that you wanted to be a scuba instructor in Aruba, right? Like, this is news to me. Versus, like we just had, or we're bringing on James McDonald, and he has been engaging with his platoon sergeant, who I know. He's sent his stuff up through the chain of command well months and months in advance so that there's no surprises. And his leadership has been super supportive of it. So I think I think that's like the most important thing. And the leadership might also be able to help point you towards some stuff too. Because there might be some CSP opportunities that you're not even aware of. I've had people reach out to me looking for opportunities, and I was able to point them to stuff that was like one connection away that they otherwise would have completely missed.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. We one of the principles of the Ranger for Life program is to go see the counselor at battalion 18 months out. That doesn't mean you've made a decision to get out of the Army, but it's really a check on, it's going to help you decide when you're going to get out as it looks over your finances and explain to you how VA works and the opportunities out there. But one thing that we try to beat home to guys is, and I mean, nobody supports transition and CSPs better than the Ranger Regiment. I know that for a fact. But we tell guys, figure this out, sit down with your chain of command, say, here's my plan. And literally, we've gotten no feedback where someone said, yeah, I sat down with my chain of command, they told me to pound sand, pick up my rucksack. Never. The issues we'll have is, okay, can you help me? I put in this plan, I want to go to CSP, and the chain of command turned me down. I said, well, wasn't this already in your plan? I mean, you've already worked this out with them, right? Well, no, I just told them today I want to leave tomorrow. I mean, it's literally that bad. And we're all there. I mean, we all want to help our guys, but we've also got a mission, and some people look at, well, it's selfish. You got to take a mission. It's not really selfish. It's like, if I don't know what you're going to do, I can't plan for it. And if I just say, okay, you're out of here, I've got to find somebody else to do what I had planned for you. So you're not you're not messing over the chain of command or the mission. If you don't lay out a plan with the chain of command, who you're screwing over is your ranger buddy.
Mhm.
And then that's what some, that's rare with rangers because rangers, it's hard to find a selfish ranger that well, a selfish ranger that made it long enough to ETS. The selfish ones don't usually last that long. They're gone long before then. Yeah, but just having a plan, sitting down at the chain of command, are they going to prove it 100%? Of course not. But they're a little bit older. They're a little bit more mature too. They're probably going to make your plan better, and you don't even know about it. And uh, you know, the compromise is almost always there, and it can be done. So yeah, again, we could have gone on for forever, but how do people get a hold of you? How do they join the Ranger? And what's the easiest way to join the Ranger investor group?
So the easiest way, you can just go to rangerinvestors.com and we have a form fill there. You can fill it out. We'll get an email. We'll follow up with you. Or you could reach out on Facebook. We've got a Facebook group, Ranger Investors. Um, or you can find our LinkedIn group, which is public. Or if you're on Signal, you can message me on Signal, and I'll bring you right in there. But if you bump into someone, we're like we've grown through word of mouth. So I would say if someone brings up Ranger Investors to you, say, hey, invite me, and then we'll get you in right there. That's usually the easiest way.
Do you see a point where I mean, uh, obviously this is an individual based kind of organization. Do you see a point of, wow, the way we're operating now, if we triple our size, will it still work?
That's a good question because I get notifications constantly because on Signal, 150 members is like critical mass.
Yeah,
I've
I
also
know.
read in
Yeah.
some books too that's like, it's a number that's close to the size of a Ranger company, right? Like it's a very it's at about the number where like when you start going over that, you start to lose control and like the closeness. So yeah, it's a good question. If anything, what I would like to see is if we do kind of have to like uh fragment and sort of break up to keep that like level of intimacy, I think we could have some more involvement over in Columbus and then out in Washington because Savannah right now is certainly our center of gravity. And most well, the majority of members have passed through 175 at some point. So I would like for those, it would be really cool if we had a big enough presence out in Columbus and then out in Washington so that out there they could do what we do here, which is more of the in-person, like happy hours and stuff like that. Because that's also what you don't see is all the interactions that are happening in Savannah outside of the groups, happy hours, and then just the one-on-one type stuff. Ranger goes and meets with, I use Carlos Cordero as another example. Like, you want someone to manage your Airbnb? Go talk to Carlos. If you're in Washington, you can't, Carlos isn't going to manage your stuff from, across the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is obviously a great group, and the counselors definitely point guys towards you all the time because it's just another Rangers helping Rangers, and it's really some people look at the Three Rangers Foundation as a Ranger for Life network. We're not. I mean, we sort of kind of manage it, but what we do is find good organizations with smart people that are doing good things, and that's why we really enjoy our partnership with the Ranger Investors Group because they've helped so many guys in so many different ways. So thanks for what you do. I know you don't get paid any extra to do that, and sort of like my job, but it pays in a different kind of currency to give back to others. So again, thanks for all you have done and what you continue to do, and we'll talk again very very soon. Any last word for you before we finish this?
Yeah, I would say just because you don't own real estate doesn't mean you can't get involved with Ranger investors because if nothing else, we want to help that young team leader who's thinking about moving off base and getting a house. And that's who we really want to help. So that person who doesn't own real estate yet should be getting involved with us so that they're not going into it blind.
Yeah. So houses on Stevenson cost more than $25,000 now?
I don't think you could buy a lot down there for 25.
Patrick, again, thanks. It's always good to talk to you. Thanks very much. Take care.
Likewise. Thanks, Mike.
Bye bye.